Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel and to the inside of my car. So got a relatively probably quick video for you guys, but I think it should be informational and may help some of you guys out who are looking to solve some issues with your MGW transmission. So first things first, I apologize if my face is red, or at least comes out red in some of these videos. If you guys have been watching my channel for a while, I'm sure you guys have seen sometimes my face is really red, sometimes it's not too bad. That's just the rosacea hitting this season. So I apologize for that. I'm trying to deal with not having my face look like a tomato in these videos. But anyways, let's talk about the MGW transmission and what I've done so far that I think should help you guys out in solving some of the issues with them. So if you guys are familiar with the MGW transmission at all, which if you're driving a manual Mustang GT, you probably are, there's some issues with them. Specifically clicky shifts, third gear lockout, just overall sloppiness to them, and just not being quite as good as a Tremec transmission. And I know it sucks. We should be getting a Tremec in these Mustang GTs. We've been complaining about this for over a decade now. I don't think that's ever going to change, so we have to deal with the MT82 as it is. So let's talk about that a little bit. Okay. So what I've done with my MT82 transmission, and I think this has been a pretty significant improvement, is I've installed an MGW short throw shifter and also changed the transmission fluid with BC Synchro Max. I think that's what it's called, BC Synchro Max, something like that. And both of those things have definitely made a pretty meaningful improvement for it. So in terms of transmission fluid, this is a relatively short topic. So in the first years of the Coyote, the Generation 1 Coyote, the transmission fluid that Ford was putting in their MT82s was subpar. I think there was an additive that really shouldn't have been in there. This issue did get solved since the Gen 2 Coyote. So since Gen 2, so Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4, the Coyote manual transmissions have been just fine in terms of their actual transmission fluid. You can gain a little bit of an improvement by swapping out the transmission fluid. It's not anything super significant, it's not anything like super meaningful, but I think it's worth it for $100 for a slight improvement. And improvements that I've noticed are just a little bit less clickiness. So when you're going into gear, sometimes, obviously I'm stationary right now, just to make this video for you guys, but when you're going into gear, I'm sure you guys have noticed, and for my MT82 drivers out there, I'm positive of this, but you get a little bit of clicking, I think is really the best term to use, but there's a little bit of clicking when you're breaking through the gate and then going into your next gear. And this kind of happens on all gears. Generally the shorter ones, so like 1st through 4th, 5th and 6th, generally not too bad, but it still can happen on those gears too. For me, that's what transmission fluid has solved. There's a lot less clickiness when going through the gears. So also what we've done, which you guys can probably notice, this is definitely a little bit shorter than a stock MT82 shifter, is we have swapped out the entire shift linkage with an MGW short throw shifter. And I'm gonna make this clear for you guys because when I was looking for reviews and trying to gather information on YouTube on MGW short throw shifters, one, they're very good for these cars, so definitely the brand you want to go to. There is a competitive brand called Barton, and I've heard really good things about them. I can't speak too much on them because I've never had them. Apparently MGWs go in a little bit better and there may be a slight quality enhancement, but both of those should be good improvements in terms of which brand you guys go with. But MGW is definitely the main one. It's the one I have and I've been loving it so far. But what I want to tell you guys, the frustration that I ran into when I was looking for information on the MGW shifters on YouTube, nobody would tell you which spec they got. So just to make it clear for you guys, if you're buying an MGW shifter, there's 4 different sizes in terms of throw length, okay? So from longest throw to shortest throw, it goes race spec standard, race spec short, X spec standard, X spec short, okay? And again, that's from longest throws to shortest throws. I have the race spec standard, so I have the longest throw for an MGW shifter that you can buy. If you want the shortest throw, you're going to go with the X spec short. So with that out of the way, I'm going to be speaking mostly about the race spec standard, which is again the one I have, and hopefully this is going to help you guys out. So with the race spec standard, it definitely does shorten the throws a little bit more from the typical shifter that you get stock with the MT82. As you guys can see, it's probably about 1/2 to 3 inches shorter in terms of height that it sticks up from the center console, and the shifts definitely are a bit shorter. I don't have the actual like throw length specs off the top of my head, but I would say probably about 1/2 an inch shorter, maybe 3/4 of an inch also in throw. There's going to be a lot of videos on YouTube which are definitely very good. Some of them again are frustrating because they don't tell you which spec they got. They just told you they got an MGW shifter and they talk about it. And I think there is going to be some pretty varying differences in terms of how the car feels depending on which spec you go with. So I've seen YouTube videos where people talk about their MGW shifter and they say that it's too tight and it makes the car, I don't want to say undrivable, but a much more difficult thing to handle when it comes to shifting. So much where there's too much force that's required to get through the gates, to get into gears. It's too heavy, and they actually end up swapping it back out for a standard, just a standard Ford MT82 shifter. That's definitely not the experience I've had. Now again, I have the race spec standard, so I have the longest throw. And for the race spec standard, again, it still shortens the throw, it still shortens the height of the shifter, but I definitely do not feel like in any way that it makes the car more difficult to drive. I definitely think there's an extreme improvement with it. Some people will say that it like completely changes the feel of the car. And I think there is some truth to that. There definitely is a change of feel in shifting, but I don't think it's like totally revolutionary. So the throws are definitely shorter. I think it's definitely a more enjoyable shifter to shift because it also takes up a lot of the sloppiness that's in the MT82. Now, if you guys can see here, I'm sitting in 4th gear. There still is a little bit of wiggle room here. Now, this is taking a lot of force from my arm to move. Now, with a typical MT82 stock shifter, it's going to move a lot more than this. But there still is a little bit of slop, specifically with the race spec standard on the MGW shifter. But it is a vast improvement. Don't get me wrong, it still is an extreme improvement from the stock shifter. Does it require more force? Maybe a little bit. Now, there is a difference between a broken-in MGW shifter and a non-broken-in MGW shifter. So there absolutely is a break-in period with these. So when I first got it installed, it was very sludgy. I think that's probably the best word, is when you're pushing through kind of the neutral zone where there's not really any force required, or there's not anything that you have to like break through in terms of like a gate or to get into the synchros. There was a bit of sludginess where it wasn't super clean. It almost had a muddy feeling to it. If I'm doing my best to explain that, hopefully you guys can kind of pick that up what I mean. But there was just a little bit more force that's required. Now that the shifter hasn't broken in, I've driven it for probably 6,000 miles now, and it's 6 months later. It definitely has a changed feel. So in the neutral zone where you're not going into synchros or going through gates, it is very smooth. It is very, very smooth. It definitely tightens up from a typical MD82 shifter. So there's not much free play, both like side to side and forward and backward before you actually hit a synchro or hit a gate to get into a gear. But in that neutral zone, it definitely is a lot smoother when in comparison to when I first got the shifter installed. So also to talk about with the MGW shifter is the gear lockouts and the clicking. Gear lockouts definitely improve with the MGW shifter. Now, the best kind of foolproof way to fix lockout is replacing your clutch. And I know how that sounds. Replacing your clutch kind of sucks. That's really expensive, and that's also going to change pretty significantly the clutch feel. And you do even have to be careful with which clutch you go with. I think, like for example, McLeod is a popular brand. The RST is generally pretty safe on these transmissions. The RXT though has been known to break gears when you dump the clutch or you do like a strong power shift or something like that. So you have to be careful with that. Also, it just kind of sucks pulling out a perfectly good clutch that has a lot of life left and then replacing it with something else. It's not like a super good feeling, and they're just really expensive. Like a clutch is going to be, you know, $1,000 plus just for the parts, and then probably another $1,000 for labor. So it's not going to be the cheapest kind of solution there. With the MGW shifter, definitely a little bit better. MGW shifter is going to run you guys about $500. And it cost me $250 to install, which wasn't too bad. So $750, I know it still sucks. That's a lot of money. Car parts are expensive. Just welcome to the name of the game. It just kind of is what it is. But in terms of the solutions that the MGW, or in terms of the problems that the MGW shifter has fixed for me, the very cliche, the very well-known second to third gear high RPM lockout has vastly improved. When I first got this car, I did a lot of testing, and from second to third gear, it would lock out pretty easily. It was very rare I could get a clean red line second to third gear shift with my stock MT82 shifter. Now with the MGW, that's very much reversed. It's very rare that I have a lockout from second to third gear. It still happens, okay? Just to shoot you guys straight, there are still times that I get a second to third gear lockout, but I also think some of that is kind of my fault, because for my guys who drive MT82s, there's just like a way you have to shift these transmissions, and it's going to be really hard to explain on camera, but for those of you guys who do drive MT82s, I know you guys know what I mean. There's just like some delicacy and some slow as smooth, smooth as fast kind of processing when it comes to changing from second to third, or really any gear shift with these MT82s. They're just kind of a way you have to do it. That's, you just kind of go, you feel it in your soul, okay? That's the best way I can explain it. Generally, that is a very, very big improvement that I've noticed with the MGW shifter. Now, in terms of mechanical feel of it, there is a bit more feelable mass when you're shifting through the gears. And what I mean by that is there's a bit more metal to metal contact. Now, metal to metal contact, I know it sounds bad, but there is just more kind of feel that transfers from your hand and into your arm. I actually enjoy it. If you guys, it's kind of hard to do, I get that. If you guys do like a comparison from a stock MT82 shifter to an MGW shifter, you'll kind of know what I mean. There's just kind of more mechanical feel that comes through when you're shifting. Now, some of the drawbacks that people will talk about with these is you get more NVH. And to help you guys out there, when I was first looking at these videos, people kept referencing NVH, and I had no idea what that meant. NVH is a general term. It just means noise, vibration, and harshness. And again, I'm saying that because when I was looking up these videos, people kept saying that. I had no idea what they were talking about. So that's what NVH is: noise, vibration, and harshness. To be specific with it though, I actually don't notice a noise increase. Some people have, again, they may be on a different spec for the MGW. Again, I have the standard race spec. Maybe if you go with a shorter one or an X spec or something, maybe some noise kind of comes through a little bit more. But for me, I haven't noticed any noise increase with the MGW shifter. But there is a little bit more vibration that comes with these. Now, I want to explain to you guys why the vibration is not necessarily such a bad thing. I know that kind of feels weird when you first hear it, like why would I want to throw in a part that's going to increase vibrations inside the car? Generally, that's a less than ideal solution, but I'm going to explain to you guys why vibrations are not such a bad thing when it comes to a shifter. So the reason why the MT82 stock shifter doesn't vibrate as much as these MGWs is because it's a remote shifter. The shifter doesn't actually mount itself to the transmission itself, where the MGW, it does. Now, when an engine is running and revving and you're driving it, an engine has a lot of vibrations. That's normal, that's typical. There's nothing wrong with that. The transmission is going to have those exact same vibrations because the transmission is very much directly bolted to the engine itself. Now, when you have a remote shifter, the shifter, like on an MT82, a stock one, that shifter is not following those vibrations of the transmission. So there is a disconnect in alignment between the shifter and the transmission. So that's where you get some issues with the lockout. Now, this isn't exactly what causes the lockout, but this is where you get some of the clickiness. This can contribute to some of the lockout issues and just the overall slop that you feel with a stock MT82 shifter. It's because it's not following the vibrations of the transmission. So again, the transmission's doing a bunch of oscillations, vibrations, and harmonics that are directly following the engine. With the MGW shifter, that is directly attached and bolted to the transmission. So although those vibrations are directly correlated from the transmission, where those are directly correlated to the engine. And this helps with all the micro aligning with gear shifting. So if a transmission, if your transmission is vibrating or oscillating in a certain way, the shifter is also doing the identical vibrations and the identical oscillations. And that actually helps with the synchro alignment. That's going to protect your synchros a little bit more, where you're not going to wear them out as quick. And it's also going to help with avoiding gear grinding. Nobody likes gear grinding. That sucks. Every time I grind my gears, I want to throw myself out of my moving car. Just kidding. Hopefully that kind of helps you guys in terms of why the vibrations that you're going to gain with the MGW shifter, they're not necessarily a bad thing. They are good. You want your shifter to vibrate in the exact way that your transmission does, so your synchros align perfectly when you're shifting a gear. And the transmission is going to vibrate the exact same way the engine is because it's directly bolted. Overall, the vibrations, they're not all that bad either. It's a very minor increase. Again, I'm speaking to the race spec standard MGW shifter, but overall it's really not bad at all. It's very minute in my opinion. This probably changes when you go down in throw length if you option for a shorter MGW shifter. But if you want your car to still feel relatively, I guess the word is similar, but if you still want your car to feel relatively similar, but just a very drastic improvement in the shifting category, I definitely recommend an MGW shifter, and specifically the race spec standard. Again, that race spec standard is going to be the longest throw. You're still going to get a shorter throw. You're going to get a shorter height with it compared to the stock MTW shifter, but it's not going to be extremely short, as I've seen like with like in videos where they have like the MGW X spec short. It's like you're almost are moving millimeters to get from gear to gear, and that probably has its advantages if you're racing. But I don't track my car. I don't do burnouts. I don't do anything super crazy with it, and because of that, I never really felt the need to have like a super short shifter. There's still just fun in using a shifter that still has a decent throw. I think that's enjoyable. If it's too short, I feel like it almost takes away from the experience of driving a manual car a little bit. But that's kind of my take, my opinion on the MGW shifter, and I guess also too transmission fluid. Just to recap, if you want to improve the clickiness in the gear shifts a little bit, definitely spend $100 to swap the transmission fluid. It's really easy. You can do it yourself. And if you're looking at an MGW shifter and you want like the spec that's going to keep it closest to stock but still get all of the really great improvements that are going to come with an MGW, definitely look at the standard spec. Definitely look at the race spec standard. So you're going to definitely improve your second to third gear lockout issues. It's very, very rare that that happens for me. Like 95% of the time I have a perfect high RPM second to third gear shift. And also you're just going to improve the clickiness and remove a lot of the slop that comes with the stock MT80 shifter as well. And also too, the vibrations, not such a bad thing, right? It's going to be a slight increase, but you kind of want that. You want the shifter to do exactly what the transmission is doing, and the transmission is simply just doing exactly what the engine is doing in terms of vibrations. So hopefully that helps you guys. Hopefully it's informational. Hopefully this video kind of sets some facts and standards for you guys who are looking on YouTube, trying to get some information on, should I go with the MGW shifter or not. I definitely recommend it. It's a very worthwhile part. I think it definitely increases the enjoyment of driving the car a bit, and it definitely solves some solutions. At least you get an extreme improvement with them. So hopefully that helps you guys. I appreciate you guys tuning into this video, and to give you guys my typical shtick, don't worry about liking, commenting, or subscribing on my videos. I don't want to be that YouTuber that browbeats you guys to do it. Every YouTube video you see is people begging for a subscription. I'm never going to be that person. So if you guys are here watching my content, getting some information or some entertainment out of it, that's more than I could ask for, and I appreciate you guys for watching. So I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.